Freeze the frame. A black car nosing through London dusk. A quick bow of the head at Clarence House. A 55-minute pot of tea with the king, and then the map flips east. No fanfare, no pool camera, just a prince stepping into Kyiv to meet wounded soldiers under the Invictus banner. If you're looking for the message, it isn't in a quote. It's in the sequence. Britain, father, wreath, Ukraine. That's the sentence. And it lands like a clear, deliberate answer to the House of Windsor. I will do the work I promised, on my terms, without waiting for permission. Start with what you can verify without a palace whisper. Harry did 4 heavy days on British soil, charity rooms where he doesn't need a title to be effective, a brief, careful meeting with his father, and a wreath at St. George's Chapel for the grandmother who taught him that service can be quieter than applause. Then, when the diary said, "Wheels up to California," the itinerary bent. He went to a war-scarred capital to sit eye level with men and women whose lives are being stitched back together, one prosthetic, one physio session, one nightmare at a time. No entourage opera. No backstage leaks. Just Invictus being used the way it was built to be used, as a bridge between trauma and the next chapter. To the palace, it complicates things, because the camera will always prefer one frame to a paragraph. The frame the world will replay is simple. One brother wanted to go and was told no, the other went. That's an unfair reduction, and still, optics are part of royal oxygen. William has played the Ukraine brief the way a future king must. Visits to refugee centers, time with British troops in Poland and Estonia, steady statements of solidarity, not a single toe over the constitutional line that keeps the crown out of government's lane. That is the job. The job's constraint is also its sting. An heir doesn't freelance foreign travel into a war zone. A non-working duke with private security and a mission sometimes can. Which is why the defiant message here doesn't need a microphone. It sits in the contrast. Harry has accepted that half in, half out was never going to be signed off by the institution. He appears to be building his own version outside it. Short, dense trips that maximize attention where it counts, then home to the life he chose. It is the compromise the palace wouldn't sanction, executed without palace permission. That is defiance, yes, but it's a calm, functional kind, the kind that says, you can shut a door without shutting me up. There's another layer, and Jenny Bond put her finger on it, privacy as the price of any repair. The Clarence House tea happened. The fact of it was allowed to breathe, and then, nothing. No selective briefing, no after-dinner story tone. Asked about his father hours later, Harry clipped the answer to 7 safe words. He is great, thank you. That may feel bland. It is also new. After a book, a documentary, and an interview that turned private rooms into public transcripts, those 7 words operate like a trust test. Will you keep quiet when quiet is the only currency that spends inside your old home? If reconciliation has a hinge, it's that. Keep the door sealed, or the door shuts itself. Now, put the 2 halves together. Radical discretion at home, radical visibility abroad. It's a paradox only on paper. In practice, it's the only strategy that gives him both the space to rebuild with his father and the reach to keep his causes alive. He doesn't need to be half in to behave like it for 4 days. He just needs to prove, trip by trip, that he can move without making the institution's life harder. Kyiv is the hardest version of that test, not because the work is controversial, but because it puts William in a box optics can't unlock. And yet, 2 truths stand side by side. 1. The heir remains the steady British voice on Ukraine, and does it within constitutional rails. 2. The spare, no longer bound by those rails, can take the camera where the heir cannot, and use it to raise money, morale, and political will for rehabilitation. If you stop insisting those truths compete, you can see how they add up. Look at Harry himself on these trips and you understand why people still say, great loss. He works rooms like the soldier who kept the barrack door open after lights out, funny, informal, just structured enough to get things done. He isn't looking over his shoulder for protocol traps. He's reading faces for a cue and then staying long enough to let a story finish. In the UK, this week, you could see him slot straight back into that muscle memory. In Kyiv, you could see why Invictus isn't brand positioning, it's biography. He knows what a uniform can carry and what it can't. He knows the difference between pity and respect. He knows when to shut up and listen for the thing that isn't being said. And the palace. The smartest move is the one they made: ride the cycle without feeding it. Emphasize William's sustained work on Ukraine. Decline adjectives about feelings. Keep the pointy end of the constitutional reminder where it belongs. Foreign policy is government's brief, not the Crown's, and then underreact in public while privately appreciating that rehabilitation clinics just got a week of attention money can't buy. There's a grown-up version of this story, in which both brothers are useful at different ends of the rope. That version doesn't sell as many headlines. It does, however, build more wheelchair ramps. Old arguments resurfaced the moment the plane touched down. Could the Crown really not have designed a part-time royal model for a man who was never going to be king? On paper, yes. In practice, the palace answer remains the same as it was in 2020. The minute you license half in, you import a conflict of interest you can't police. Where does public service end and personal commerce begin? Who signs off the sponsorship logos when a platform looks like charity, but behaves like product? The model breaks not on the good days, but on the grey ones. You do not solve that with clever contracts. You solve it by being outside the palace when you do the commercial work. Harry rejected the binary then. He's living with it now by blurring it responsibly rather than legally. He'll take the trips that look half in, but he will fund, staff, and secure them all out. Security sits under all of this like a base note. The High Court fight told you how deep the nerves run. His team says he can't move freely here without state protection. The Home Office says protection isn't a personal subscription. Kyiv proved a different point. If a host nation and a private team can make a corridor safe enough, he will take it. It isn't neat. It is, however, the life he picked, tempered by the life he had before he picked it. What about William? Pride doesn't stop stinging just because it's disciplined. He has spent 2 years keeping Ukraine visible inside the British attention span, talking to families who've lost everything, standing with soldiers who stand for the rest of us, never once confusing empathy with policy. He will look at the Kyiv frame, feel the pinch, and do the only thing a future king can do with a pinch: swallow, keep his counsel, and turn up tomorrow in a room that smells of floor polish and good cake. The monarchy's usefulness is measured in that room more often than on a front line. And Catherine? She is still the quietest metronome in the building. When headlines thicken, she slows the pulse, clothes that red steadiness, smiles that red ease, gestures that keep a speculative question from finding air. She is the proof of concept for the house's next 20 years. Fewer speeches, more scenes, rooms left calmer than she found them. In weeks like this, that is not window dressing. That is ballast. Here's the line that will outlast the cycle: he is great, thank you. Not because it tells you anything about a medical chart, but because it signals intent. For all the catharsis of telling, some repairs need a vow of silence before they need an apology. The man who once turned private pain into public paragraphs chose this time not to. If you've ever tried to row back toward a parent after years of drift, you recognize how hard that is. If the vow holds, the door stays open. If it breaks, the bolt slides and stays there. So, did Harry send a defiant message? Yes, just not the operatic one the word suggests. It wasn't, watch me, it was, watch the work. It wasn't, I can hurt you, it was, I can help them, and I will, regardless. Defiance, here, is the refusal to be defined by either exile or permission. It's the decision to keep a promise to people in rehab wards and to impose a new rule on himself in the halls he used to live in. No more airing the private for public leverage. If he can hold both lines, the house he left will begin to trust the room again. If he can't, the house will go back to padlocking doors. 2 images will live from this week, and they don't have to cancel each other. One is a father and son with a cooling pot of tea and all the wrong words to choose from. The other is a prince in a hospital corridor where the air smells of disinfectant and determination. You can dislike the man and respect the work. You can support the institution and admit it isn't always built to handle the outliers it produces. You can want the brothers to meet without insisting that they must perform that meeting for you. In the end, the Crown's hardest boundary, stay out of policy, stay inside service, held, and so did Harry's. He didn't ask for a pass. He didn't ask for a title. He asked for a corridor to the people he promised to serve. He found it. He went. And if you're listening for the sentence that actually matters, it isn't defiant, or furious, or snubbed. It's the old, unfashionable one the late Queen made look easy, and both brothers, in wildly different ways, keep trying to remember: be seen when it helps, be quiet when it heals, let service be larger than you are. Everything else is commentary.